The river always reminded Daniel Carter of life itself, sometimes calm, sometimes rough, always moving forward no matter what obstacles lay in its way. He stood there one summer afternoon, his shoes worn from years of labor, watching his 8-year-old son, Ethan, skip rocks across the water. The boy's laughter was a melody that lifted the heavy weight pressing on Daniel's shoulders. For Daniel, life had not been easy. Once a skilled carpenter with dreams of running his own shop, he had been forced into odd jobs after the recession hit. His wife had walked out years earlier, leaving him to raise Ethan alone. Rent was overdue, bills piled on the kitchen counter, and the old truck he drove coughed like it was begging for retirement. But despite it all, Daniel carried a quiet strength. Every morning, he woke up for his boy. Ethan was his reason to fight, to keep moving, no matter how weary his bones felt. That afternoon, Daniel was grateful just to share a peaceful moment with his son by the riverside. The town's community park had always been a sanctuary, a place where he could forget about his struggles for a little while. He didn't know that within the next few minutes, his life would take a turn that not even the river itself could have predicted. As Daniel and Ethan were packing up their picnic blanket, a scream pierced the air. It was sharp, panicked, and desperate. His head snapped toward the sound. On the far side of the river, people were pointing toward the water. His eyes followed their gaze, and his heart froze. A little girl was thrashing helplessly in the current, her small arms flailing, her cries swallowed by the rushing water. Without a second thought, Daniel kicked off his shoes and ran. "Dad!" Ethan called after him, fear in his voice. But Daniel's mind was already locked on the child. He dove into the water with the strength of a man who knew he had no time to waste. The current was stronger than it looked. Cold water slammed against his body, pulling him under, but Daniel fought it with everything he had. He reached the girl, her eyes wide with terror, her small hands clutching at the air. Wrapping his arm firmly around her waist, he kicked hard toward the shore. His lungs screamed for air, but he refused to give in. He would not let her go. When they finally broke through to shallow water, Daniel staggered forward, coughing, with the girl clinging to him like a lifeline. People rushed to help, gasping at the sight. The child sobbed into his soaked shirt, trembling but alive. "Daddy! Daddy!" Ethan's voice broke through the chaos as he ran to his father, wrapping his little arms around Daniel's waist. Daniel held both children close, relief flooding him. Then another cry split the air, not of fear, but of overwhelming emotion. A woman ran toward them, her designer heels sinking into the muddy grass, tears streaming down her flawless face. She dropped to her knees and gathered the little girl into her arms, kissing her wet hair and rocking her like she had been given her life back. "Emma! Oh my God, Emma!" she sobbed. Daniel took a step back, trying to steady himself, giving the mother space. His chest rose and fell heavily, his clothes clinging to him, but his eyes softened at the sight of mother and daughter reunited. For him, that was enough. "Sir," the woman's voice broke as she looked up at him, gratitude spilling from her eyes. "You saved my daughter." Daniel shrugged slightly, brushing off the weight of her words. Anyone would have done the same. But she shook her head fiercely. "No. Not anyone." Her hand tightened around her daughter's trembling body. "You risked your life for her." Daniel offered a tired smile, nodded once, and turned to gather Ethan. He wasn't one to linger in the spotlight. Life had taught him humility, and he never expected thanks or rewards for doing what he felt was right. To him, kindness wasn't a transaction, it was humanity. What Daniel didn't know, however, was that the woman kneeling on the grass was Victoria Hayes, one of the most powerful billionaires in the state, owner of Hayes Enterprises, a company whose name was etched on skyscrapers across the city. That evening, Victoria couldn't stop replaying the scene in her mind, the stranger who had plunged into the river without hesitation, the quiet strength in his eyes, the way he had disappeared without waiting for praise. For a woman who lived in a world of wealth and influence, surrounded by people who calculated every move for personal gain, his selflessness struck her like lightning. The next day, determined to find him, Victoria asked around. It didn't take long, small towns never kept secrets for long. She learned about Daniel Carter, the struggling single father who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. She learned about his late nights, his sacrifices, and his quiet dignity. When Victoria finally appeared at his doorstep, Daniel was stunned. He lived in a modest apartment building, the kind with peeling paint and flickering hallway lights. Standing there in her tailored suit, she looked out of place, yet her eyes held no judgment, only warmth. "Mr. Carter," she began softly, "I don't know how to thank you." Daniel shifted uneasily, rubbing the back of his neck. "You don't need to. I'm just glad your daughter's okay." But Victoria wasn't here simply to say thank you. She had brought something else, an offer, though not the kind Daniel expected. She didn't offer him money, a check, or a handout. Instead, she offered him an opportunity. "I've seen how hard you work, how much you sacrifice for your son," she said. "A man like you deserves more than just survival. You deserve a chance to build a life worthy of your strength." Daniel frowned slightly. He wasn't used to people offering him anything other than pity or empty promises. "Why are you doing this?" Victoria's gaze softened. "Because people like you remind me of what really matters. And maybe because you've already given me back the most precious thing in my life, my daughter." From that moment on, Daniel's world began to change in ways he never imagined. Victoria hired him at Hayes Enterprises, not out of charity, but because she saw his craftsmanship, his discipline, his quiet leadership. He started in a workshop designing custom wood interiors for their luxury properties, something he excelled at but never had the chance to showcase. His work spoke for itself, beautiful, precise, and filled with soul. As the weeks turned into months, Daniel and Victoria's paths intertwined more often. Ethan and Emma became inseparable, their laughter echoing through parks and backyards. And slowly, despite the gulf between their worlds, something unspoken grew between Daniel and Victoria, a connection deeper than circumstance, forged by shared gratitude and quiet admiration. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold, Victoria found herself sitting beside Daniel on the same riverside where it had all begun. Ethan and Emma were chasing fireflies nearby, their joy filling the air. "You know," Victoria said softly, watching the children, "when I saw you carrying Emma out of that river, I realized something. All the money in the world, all the power, it means nothing without love, without people willing to give of themselves." She turned to him, her voice trembling slightly. "You showed me that." Daniel looked at her, his rugged face etched with sincerity. "I didn't save her for thanks or recognition. I couldn't stand by and watch a child slip away. That's all." Victoria smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "And that's exactly why I've fallen for you." The words hung in the air, delicate yet powerful. Daniel's heart skipped, not because of who she was, but because of the honesty in her voice. He thought of Ethan, of the struggles they had endured, of the river that had nearly stolen a life but had instead given him a future he never expected. That night, under a sky filled with stars, Daniel realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as moments of crisis. A single act of selflessness had not only saved a life but had rewritten his own. And as he held Victoria's hand, with their children's laughter echoing around them, Daniel Carter knew one truth that would never change: love, in its purest form, was the most powerful force of all.